tal es Roberto?
Hola, soy Evelyn.
Y Juan Carlos.
Y somos Tercer Cielo.
Hola, ¿qué tal amigos? Soy Benjati. ¿Qué tal amigos? Te saluda Funky.
¿Qué tal amigos? Le habla su hermano Michael Rodríguez.
Hola, ¿cómo estás? Te saluda Marcos Vidal desde España.
Hola, les habla Marcos Witt.
Hola, soy Ingrid Rosario.
Hola amigos, les habla Harold Guerra.
Todos ellos, sus mejores canciones y muchos más hacen parte de la programación de Aliento Radio. Estas son las redes sociales oficiales de Aliento Radio: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter y YouTube. Encuéntranos como @Aliento Radio Oficial. Aliento Radio Oficial.
Hello, welcome to Avatar Home Health and Hospice podcast. Today we're going to talk about hospice and about a few other things, but mainly about hospice. And to help me do this, I have Maya Arguez, who is our director of social media. And Maya, go ahead, start off.
Yes, so today we're going to talk about Felix's favorite subject, hospice, but also more specifically about what happens when that family and that patient has just received that hospice recommendation. So why don't you start us with, let's say the doctor does recommend hospice. What does that mean? Because sometimes they don't always go into detail or talk too much about it.
Yeah, that we find that a lot, So they go, we're gonna refer you to a hospice agency, and then let's say there's basically two cases. One where the family is familiar with hospice, so they know that means that the patient is not gonna forego any, or he's not gonna get any more aggressive treatments for whatever disease he's got, and that's it. He's looking at 4, 5, 6 months of life, and then he's gonna pass. So obviously it's a very difficult situation, but when you know what hospice is, and if the doctor has maintained an open communication with the patient and the family, then it makes it that much easier because it doesn't come as a surprise.
Right.
The other situation is when the patient doesn't know, the family doesn't know that the patient is as grave as he is, and they still have hope that with continued treatment, the patient is going to get better. So then when they get the hospice referral, they don't read. Number one, they might not even know what hospice is. So the way it happens is they tell them that they're going to be referred to a hospice agency, and let's say that hospice agency is Avatar Home Health and Hospice. So that referral comes to our agency. We check the eligibility, which takes us about 5 minutes. And then we call the patient for an appointment. And that's where things get a little bit dicey because in many cases, the patients do not know what hospice is. Mm-hmm. So what I like to do in those cases is if they don't know anything about hospice, and they got kind of, we can feel on the phone that they were caught by surprise. I like to make an appointment and go see them personally because face-to-face, when I go to their home or the hospital, sometimes I go visit the patients in the hospital and just really take my time. And to me, it's very important to have that that eye contact and to be able to show some empathy that we know what they're going through, that we've been doing this for 21 years, that we're going to take really good care of them. And then we tell them about the hospice services. But before I get into the hospice services, what that entails, I want to make sure that the patient and his family or her family, get a little bit over the shock of, hey, gee, my dad is going to be dying in 6 months, or my mom is going to die in a few months, or whoever it is, my spouse. And so that's, you kind of need a special touch for that. Not everyone can really do that.
Right.
And from the very beginning, when I first started doing this back in, I think hospice, the first hospice consult I did was back in 2010. And I just felt, I guess I fell in love with it. I think it's so important for somebody that's going to go into hospice to have people taking care of them, people that care and that they understand what the hospice service is. So we put our nurses through a real good hospice training. All our nurses are cross-trained, home health and hospice. But before we let them see a hospice patient, number one, they have to show us that they're good nurses with home health patients. So once they go through the training and they show us that the training has taken place and they understand the way Avatar Home Health and Hospice treats their patients, then we'll put them into a hospice training, and then we have them do hospice visits with an experienced nurse, and we don't let them see a hospice patient until we really are sure that they can do a really good job. Because again, when it comes to the nursing side, the nursing itself is easier in hospice than in home health, because normally in hospice, the only thing that you might have to do is maybe wound care because they develop bed sores. Outside of that, normally there isn't much to do. Where in home health, you get hit with a whole bunch of stuff. So, but in hospice, you need to have that touch, that caring touch, that is so important.
So for someone who does have a little bit of confusion,
Yeah.
With hospice care, they have to have a terminal illness.
Yes.
And the doctor is giving them a life expectancy of 6 months or less. Obviously, there's never a for sure number, but that's the general guideline.
That's yes.
And they have to stop curative treatments, right? So even
Yes.
if they do want to continue curative treatment and that life expectancy is still less than 6 months, they cannot do the two together.
Right. So that, I mean, if the person might not be ready for hospice. Sometimes we get orders for hospice, and when we talk to the patient, say, well, but I'm going to start a new chemo treatment in a month. And then we explain to them that the reason the doctor is recommended the hospice is because they don't think that any more treatments are going to help them. But then sometimes they find another doctor. So the other doctor is going to, again, I don't want to say anything negative about doctors, but hopefully the other doctor understands that there isn't much to do for this patient. But if they want to go and get more treatments, they're allowed to go. All we tell them is, okay, go have the treatment, and then in many cases we can be their home health agency, because obviously under home health they can be having any treatments they want. And then after the treatment, so maybe sometimes they go to chemo for the new treatment 2 or 3 times. And depending how tough that chemo is, because chemo in some cases is very, very harsh. Mm-hmm. Depending on how that treatment goes, after 2 or 3 treatments, they might go, forget it. I'm done with this.
Right.
I've been doing this for years and I'm not getting any better. And one doctor already recommended hospice. And then we go ahead and admit them to hospice.
Right.
So
with hospice, I think there's a lot of terms like comfort care, comfort focus, things like that. So what exactly does that mean in terms of hospice?
Yes. So what we promise, or what we deliver in hospice is comfort and for the patient to be as pain-free as possible. So what comfort means? Comfort means that the patient is not going to be going to doctors. The patient is not going to have blood work. The patients can be home. They can go out to the movies if they're able to. They can do whatever they want to. They can eat whatever they want to. So there's no really restrictions. Of course, we still have to give them a diet advice, and we, obviously, if they're diabetic, we tell them not to eat sugar and all that good stuff. But listen, if the patient is in hospice and they want to do whatever they want to do, that's going to be fine with us, even though we cannot encourage it. So the patient has the freedom to do whatever he or she wants. And then, of course, if the patient is in pain, we're going to mitigate that pain. So that's why when I talk about hospice with the patient, I tell them, we're going to make sure that you're comfortable and that you're as pain-free as possible. Because you don't want to have the patient so, infused with pain medication that he's going to be asleep all day, So you want to give him enough to be that the pain is tolerable. Of course, we ask the patient if the patient wants more pain medication, we give it to them, but we try not to. We're very conservative on that side. And then, of course, if they're taking pain medication, we have to treat the side effects of the pain medications, which is, you're talking about anxiety, lack of sleep, constipation, those kind of things. So we take care of that too. So the main idea is for the patient to be able to have closure, to be able to do things that if they can, I'm glad I'm saying this, because it's so important to start hospice as early as possible, because then the patient can have time and can have the energy to do things that they've been putting off because they were going to a doctor 2-3 times a week. So like I have said in other podcasts, we have patients that go on cruises and they go on a week cruise or a 2 weeks cruise. That's fine. We give them the medications to take. They can go. They can go to a family reunion. They can do whatever they want to do, and that's very important, because we have seen it when our patients we had a patient who went to a family reunion, and when she came back, she was so happy to have met children that she had never met before, that she was able to get, caught up with her cousin or her sister. And she was so glad that she went to that family reunion. And these things are important because, or it could be the other way around. Let's say that the patient, is sorry that he did something to someone, so maybe that patient wants to make amends or call that person and have a conversation with that person. So all these little things that might seem mundane, they're not. They're important. We want that when a person is in hospice, we want it to be free of anything that is pending. That's why our social worker goes there. She does any paperwork that's pending. She helps the family make funeral arrangements. So they can get that out of the way. Then we can focus on something else that might be pending. So yeah, it's not only, so it's got a lot of components where that person might be short of. Our chaplain does a wonderful job with people that maybe their wife died and they were mad at their wives and they still have to deal with that, and they feel so guilty about never having made up with their wives or with their parents, or there's a lot of psychological stuff that goes on when a person is facing death. Because then also the regrets. Oh, if I would have done this, if I would have gone here, so all that stuff needs to be dealt with, and that's what our social work and our chaplains are there for. And of course, our nurses are very good. They have real good training. They can deal with this, and so the hospice treatment or services are so comprehensive. They're very complete. Everything: medical equipment, medical supplies, medications, nursing, home health aid, visiting doctors, counselors, and which is like that would be the job of the social worker, and the chaplain. So it's very complete. And in our case, that I don't think a lot of hospice agencies can say this. Every single one of those families, any single one of the families, whether in hospice, home health, or caretaker services, with Avatar Home Health and Hospice, they have my cell number. And they have the cell number of my partner, who is the director of nursing. So if there's something that goes awry, they're not happy with something, or they're very happy with something, which many times happens, I get a phone call telling me what a wonderful person our chaplain is, or how grateful they are that our nurse is doing what she's doing. And because our service is excellent, more than excellent, because we do care. So, and then on the other hand, if they have a complaint, or they haven't received the oxygen, or they were expecting the medical supplies yesterday and it's today, and they don't have the medical supplies, I get an Uber driver to drive the medical supplies to them. So we find a solution. We take care of our patients.
Right. So going back to kind of what the process looks like for starting hospice. So let's say the doctor says that they qualify for hospice, they recommend it, and the family is open to it. So you go to their house pretty much within a few hours. You're going to try to have someone there to talk to them, answer any questions. Now, what happens next? If they decide, yes, I want to go with Avatar Home Health, what are the next steps from there?
Okay, so when we visit the patient and their family, what we do, one of the things we do is we get an inventory of what the patient needs. So, for instance, medical equipment, if they need it and if they want it, they're gonna get a hospital bed with rails so they don't fall, a bedside table, bedside commode, wheelchair, walker, oxygen, a Hoyer lift if they need one, a shower chair, whatever they need, we're gonna send it to them, right? And then also the medical supplies. So they need diapers, wipes, lotions. Some of the stuff we send it to them whether they need it or not, because we want them to have it at home, and if they ever need it, it's already there. And then also with the medications, we send them what is called a comfort pack that includes pain medication and the medications for the side effects of the pain. And even if they're not in pain, we want them to have it, keep it in the refrigerator, and whenever they have it, they need it. If they say they're in pain at 2:00 in the morning, they don't have to be calling us to see when they're gonna get the pain medication. It's already at their home. Mm-hmm. So we get the information of what they need. They're gonna get it within the same day. The medication sometimes, if it's not urgent, they might get it that day, or they might get, depending on the time. Like, so if it's a late afternoon consult and they want the medications the same day, they might get the medications at 10, 11 o'clock at night. So many people say, no, send them tomorrow because I don't really need them. So that's the first thing that we do. And then the nurse will make an appointment to go see them and do the paperwork necessary to do the admission and the evaluation into hospice services. Mm-hmm. So that happens hopefully the same day. If we can do it the same day, if the patient allows, it's not really up to us. It's up to the patient. So in the case that a patient is in the hospital, the same thing. We get together with the hospital, and one of the things that we ask the hospital, are you going to take care of the ambulance, or you want us to do it? If they want us to do it, we arrange for the ambulance. Then we have the consultation, if we can, with the patient at the hospital. So by the time that patient gets home, the hospital bed and everything that he needs is waiting for him at home, right? So we try to anticipate whatever the patient's needs are in order to make sure that, again, it's about comfort, right? So they don't have to worry about, oh my God, when is the bed gonna get here? Oh my God, no. When you get home, everything is gonna be there waiting for you.
Right. So as you mentioned, the nurse goes out, they do an assessment, and with that comes creating the care plan. So what does the care plan, how does that change person to person and patient to patient?
Yeah, it all depends on the needs. So let's say we have a patient that has a wound care that needs care, and it's not something that we can teach the caretaker to do. So the nurse is gonna go there usually 3 times a week. For a hospice patient that does not have a wound, if they have a sore, that's not a big deal. That can be treated easily. But if they don't have a wound that needs to be taken care of, then the nurse normally will go twice a week. The home health aide, that's the nurse's assistant, and her main job is to go to a patient's home and give them a bath, or help the caretaker give her a bath. Because in the case, like I said, we have the patient weighs 200 pounds, and he cannot ambulate on his own. That is a difficult patient to get to the bathroom. So if we cannot get him to the bathroom, we'll give him a bed bath. But it's always better to give him a bath, like a shower. But better to give him a shower. So we try to get the patient to the bathroom, to the shower, and sometimes one person cannot do it, so the nurse or the CNA, the nurse's assistant, and the caretaker will take the patient to the bathroom and give him a bath. So that's the main job of the CNA is to make sure that the patient is taking at least 3 baths a week. And she also will change the linen, do light cleaning around the patient's bedroom, and that kind of service. And then we have the visiting doctor, and the visiting doctor is going to go, depending, usually they might go once a month. If the patient needs it more often, then it will go more often. But then again, in hospice, there's not really that much need. So we have the nurse, the CNA, the visiting doctor, then we have the chaplain. Now, of course, the chaplain we all need to ask the patient, do you want this? So the nurse's help is needed. The CNA help is needed. The doctor's visits are going to be needed whenever they're needed. And then the chaplain and the social worker, we ask the patient, would you like our social worker to come and visit you? And would you like our chaplain to come and visit you? And our recommendation is always, even if you don't think you need him now, let him come at first, meet them face to face, have a conversation with them, and then if you don't want to see them anymore, you don't have to see them anymore.
Right.
If you want to see them once a month, it's once a month. Every other week. So, but those are the main services that we will provide.
So another thing that the nurses do in that initial assessment is they review not just the new medication that the patients are going to receive, but the previous medication they've been on. So why is that so important?
That is so important because many times we find a patient taking, for instance, 3 different medications for blood pressure when they only need to be taking one. They might be taking a medication that's not supposed to be taken if they're taking the other medication they're taking. So when we go into a patient's home for the first time, we don't know what we're going to find. But many times they're taking medications that have expired. We have medications that the doctor prescribed them, 2 years ago, and they went to another doctor and they got the other doctor to prescribe the medication when they don't need that medication. So our nurse will take inventory of all the medications they're taking. She will get in touch with our doctor, our medical director, and she knows, this nurse knows, hey, doctor, he's taking this medication and that medication, and the doctor's going to say, all right, tell him not to take this medication anymore, tell him not to take that medication anymore, and we're going to prescribe a new medication if they need to. So that is something that is very common, that the patient is taking a lot more medications that they need.
Yeah. So now let's focus the shift a little bit to the caregivers and the families, because hospice is a special service in the sense that you mentioned that we really try to take care of the families as well. So what does that look like when it comes to supporting the families during the hospice process and then after as well?
Yeah. So the one of the differences between home health and hospice is that in home health, we take care of the patient. I mean, there's other differences, but we focus on the patient. The family is secondary, right? If we see that they need something, we might refer them someplace, but we don't provide any services to the family. In hospice, we see what the family needs. In many cases, we look at the family nucleus, the people that are actually either living with the patient or that are visiting the patient frequently, and we might find like a sister or a child that is having a hard time facing that situation. So that's where the chaplain and the social worker / counselor come in. And we get them involved with that particular member of the family. And we make sure that they're taken care of. So we have a bereavement service that by Medicare standards, after the patient passes, we have to keep in touch with the family for a whole year. In our case, we stay in touch with the family forever, unless the family tells us not to do it. But we send them postcards, say, hey, how you doing? If you need anything, call us. Our chaplain, which she's excellent with this, she will call them on the phone and say, hey, how are you? And how you doing? And even though we're not taking care of their relative anymore, she will offer them to pray with them, to read the scriptures with them. If they need her to come, if they need her to come to their home, they come to their home, even though we're not getting compensated for that, because once again, our commitment is to help our fellow human beings, and that commitment goes whether we're going to get paid or not.
Right. And then also caregivers a lot of times feel like they're on their own, they have to do everything by themselves. And then there's different degrees of help that we can offer them if they're open to it. So what does that look like when it comes to a few hours here and there, respite care, things like that?
Right. So there's different ways to help the family or the caretaker, because usually there's one person that's the main caretaker. And that's what we're looking. We're looking for the main caretaker. That's the one that we're going to be talking to. That's the one that has a tremendous job. If you ever took have taken care of someone 24/7, changing diapers, giving them a bath, feeding them, changing the linen in the bed. It's a non-stop thing. It's not, it's like having triplets at one time and changing diapers, for triplets. So it's just very, very, it's just very demanding on that person. So that's why we are concerned not only with the patient, but that we got to look at the caretaker and say, how much help do you need? Even though we're limited as the kind of help that we can provide or the amount of help we can provide, we try to supplement that with, like, say, a volunteer. So let's say that the family, the caretaker say, oh my God, I haven't been to church or to service for a month. I would like to go and meet, because they so not only the patient is basically in seclusion, the caretaker is also. So there's social need, that need that you have to talk to other people, not about disease or illnesses, but about how you're doing and how's your children, and maybe go to the church and sing and just go out in the sunshine and enjoy the sun for a few hours. So we might have a volunteer to stay with the patient for 4 or 5 hours. We might get somebody to go there like 2 or 3 times a week. Like right now, we're working with a family, and they wanted somebody there. The patient is heavy. The wife, she already hurt her back trying to move the patient. So she asked us, what can you do for us? So one of the things that we do is we look at the different benefits they might have. The man is a veteran. So we got in touch with the VA. The VA sent a nurse to their patient's home. And now she's going to get someone to go to their home. In addition to our services, she's going to be getting VA services. So, so we go through, we turn every stone to see what kind of help we can get to this family.
Right.
And ultimately, if the family can afford it, we can get private pay caretakers, right? And even though it might sound expensive, when the family realizes my husband or my wife or my spouse, he's only got a few more weeks to go. And so now they need more help. They say, okay, so we're going to spend some money, but it's not going to be forever. It's not a commitment forever, because the patient has a limited amount of time on this earth. So then they will go ahead, and I had a family a couple of years ago, and they told me, we want 24/7 services. And I said, well, that can get kind of, pricey, because it's a lot of hours and you got to pay these people. And she said, well, listen, realistically, my dad only has like maybe 2 or 3 weeks to go. We're blessed. We can afford it. So let's go ahead and do it. So for like 2.5 weeks or so, we had somebody there for 24 hours, besides the nurse and so on. And then lastly, you mentioned that the respite care. So what is respite care? Respite care is to help the caretaker. It's not for the patient, it's for the caretaker. So let's say the caretaker's exhausted, or they want to go to a wedding that's away, and they got to take a short trip, and they say, okay, so what can we do? So what we can do is we can take the patient and put them in an assisted living facility or a skilled facility, and we will pay the room and board for 5 days. And again, our nurses and our CNAs will still go to that assisted living facility and take care of the patient. But then also they get care here at the assisted living facility or the skilled nursing facility, and we pay for 5 days. And then during those 5 days, the caretaker can rest or take a short vacation or do something, right? Or just stay home. They stay home and rest. So that's respite care. Now, the patient can stay there longer, but after the 5th day, the family has to pay the room and board.
Right.
So that is respite care.
Right. So one other thing that I think can be a worry oftentimes is what happens at night. As soon as someone gets on hospice care, the chances of things happening overnight go up, and that can be a little bit alarming, right? Do we have to call 911? Do we have to rush to the hospital? Things like that. So what do we do to help them?
So what we do is that we have 24, when we have a hospice patient, we have 24/7 nurses available. So let's say something happens 2:00 in the morning on a Saturday night. Don't worry, you call our agency, you're gonna be turned over to a nurse, the on-call nurse, and that nurse is going to talk to the family on the phone and tell them what to do. And if the nurse has to go to the patient's home, she gets in her car and she goes to the patient's home. So you don't have to worry about that. What we do advise the family is not to, they get nervous, they call 911, the ambulance comes, they take the patient to the hospital. The hospital will not, in most cases, will not admit the patient. The patient sits in observation for a few hours, they send it back home. So it's better if you call the agency, we send our nurse over there, she takes care of the issue. If she has to call our doctor, she calls our doctor. But we take care of the issue, and 99% of the times, the patient is going to be fine.
Right. So while we wrap up, is there any last statements, misconceptions, things you want to go over?
Well, yes, a lot of misconceptions. So just remember that the best thing to do is get the information before your loved one needs services. So that's what I always tell people. Call me at 281-703-8050. That is 281-708050. A lot of zeros. But call me and ask me questions. I have the answers. I've been doing this for 21 years. So I know about insurance. I know about assisted living facilities, group homes, hospice, home health, caretaker services. Just ask me. And if I don't know, I'll get you the answer. And even if you're out of the area, because we take care of Harris and Montgomery County here in South Texas. But if you're, say, I always say Amarillo because I've gotten a couple of calls from Amarillo. But so if you're in Amarillo, Texas, go ahead, call me. You're in New Orleans, call me. Because this podcast goes all over the place. So, and also going to our webpage, avatarhomehealth.com. And again, we also are in social media, and Maya's going to give you the sites where we're at. But yeah, the best thing to do is just to call me.
Yeah, so we have Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can find us all at Avatar Home Health and Hospice. And as you mentioned, we have our website, avatarhomehealth.com, and we try to give as many free resources as possible. But I guess the best free resource is to give you a call and to join us on Wednesdays because we're here every week.
All right. So thank you for tuning in to our podcast. Again, we are at your service, and may God bless you.
Estas son las redes sociales oficiales de Aliento Radio. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter y YouTube. Encuéntranos como @Aliento Radio Oficial. Aliento Radio Oficial.